Can everyone see this? Should I make it, should I zoom in? All right, so here is our story. So does anyone know what a story is in the, software engineering sense? So this is how, so we haven't talked about like the, professional workflow methodology, but there's something called Agile, which is basically the industry standard. So it's how development works. So the older model, I think John may have talked about this, or he will if he hasn't already. So it's kind of like the waterfall model, which is basically, you get a huge project or a contract or something, and so people plan it out. They spend a few months planning, and then they figure out how everything's going to work and what everything's going to do, and then they spend another few months writing everything and coding all that together. And then once that's done, they spend another few months testing, and then once that's done, maybe they check back in and they either deliver it, or if the customer wants something else, and they go back to the beginning and start over and do that. So that's fine, but the problem with that is it's a very long, it's a long life cycle. So if requirements change at some point, it's a little clumsy. So to go all the way back to the beginning, it's a very like assembly lines kind of approach. So Agile basically is the same thing as that. The basic process is the same. You plan, then you develop, and you test, and then you deliver. But it happens at a much quicker pace, and it's all kind of mixed up together. So the typical kind of unit of, I don't know what we call it, the unit of, not the unit of work, but the I don't know how to describe it, but so there are these things called sprints, and sprints are typically 2 weeks. So you'll have a bunch of like, okay, here's what we want to do for this sprint. We have 2 weeks to do it, and then people will estimate how long they think that all of the different tasks they have to get done will take, and then those get divided up. And those tasks are called stories. And stories will be, you'll have a story, which will be some kind of, task you need to complete, a new feature, fixing a bug, adding a button, whatever it happens to be. And there'll be an estimated like time to complete. And so they use points, and a point is basically like a day's work. So you're given a feature, and let's say, everyone estimates it. There's usually a collective process at the beginning, so people will estimate. So here's a task. How long do we think it'll take someone to do this? Well, 3 days. So this task will be given 3 points, right? And then if you get that task, then you basically, your goal would be to finish this within 3 days, something like that. That, of course, doesn't always work out. So you get a story, which is a specific kind of task. You get an estimated time to completion, which would be in points. And then you might get a description. You might get a detailed description. You might get an incorrect description. You might get something like, well, we think something might be wrong with this. Can you check it out? So that's just something to expect. You have basically no idea the quality or the preciseness of the description for your task. So it's like documentation. Some documentation is really good, it's very detailed, it's very helpful, and some documentation is almost useless. All right. So what do we want to do? So we want to make a travel package app. So this app will get a user's budget. It will get a user's destination based on that budget. So let's say the user has $1,000 to spend, and then based on that threshold, the user will have basically some options to choose from in terms of a destination. And then let's say the third requirement is that it should display a confirmation message to the user. So sometimes these stories are expressed as like from the user's perspective. So something like, as a user, I input my budget. As a user, I see displayed a list of options that are within my budget. As a user, once I select one of those options, I get a confirmation message. So this is just kind of how tasks are packaged up and presented. Are there any questions about our requirements?
Chad, I just want to add one thing from like a UX perspective.
Sure.
Like these will often come out of like UX research done beforehand. So like when the UX team is researching like this travel package app, they'll come up with these stories. Like Chad said, like as a user or as a traveler, I want to do X, and then they come up with the story that the developers are going to build.
Right. Yeah. So these requirements can come from a number of different places, kind of depending on what you're actually doing. So yeah, a UX team can give you requirements. You can get requirements from your back-end people, or yeah, it all just depends. You can get multiple requirements from multiple people.
Yeah, and the only reason I brought that up is because like I've heard stories like in this context, and then user stories like when you're in a UX context, and it kind of bleeds together. But so I just wanted to bring that up in case people hear both things.
Yeah, thank you. Has anyone else ever worked under this kind of system? Okay.
I do security testing under this style system, so I'm like we got to test at each phase. So
okay.
Totally different approach to it though. I just sit around listening to their plan and figure out, this is going to be broke, because when you go through the phases and you update it, you can almost hear issues where they're not going to go back and fix things, and it's going to cause issues about it because they're going to just update one block of the code, leave the rest of the code where it's at.
Yeah.
Like easy victories.
Yeah, but it keeps everyone busy, right? So you're not gonna run out of work to do. Yeah, there's a kind of like I think when you first start out, like when I first started out, I imagined that this is like, okay, we'll build this application and then it's gonna work, and then we're all just gonna like put our feet up and chill out. But it just, for whatever reason, it simply doesn't work that way. So things are always changing and breaking and so on.
Yeah, we use the agile method for automation use cases in a security operations center. So, but what would happen is people would grab the stories or the task off the Kanban board, and then if there wasn't enough detail in the story, or the story didn't articulate what the end result really looked like, then folks would work on it, and then it'd be kind of a mess at the end because what was implemented was this halfway swing from type metaphor.
Yeah. So I mean that's another important skill. So making sure that you understand oftentimes most of the work you're doing is figuring out exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And that's part of the reason why in interview, we haven't really done too much of that right now, but when we start doing more interview whiteboarding challenges, an important part of solving the problem is asking lots of questions at the beginning to make sure that you understand exactly what the problem is. Because you can just, oh yeah, okay, do this. Okay, yeah, I got it. And then you just start building something, and then it turns out after you're done that that's not actually what anyone wanted. So, all right, so let's start breaking this down a little bit. So we've just been given this task. So we, go back to our desk and we start planning. So we can think about, so if we're going to design a class, so let's just say this will be a class. Classes have data, they have, objects or stuff, and they also have methods. So, nouns and verbs. So let's talk about what data might we need based on the requirements.
A list of destinations based on cost and their associated costs.
Okay. All right.
We will need a budget.
A budget? Okay, so yeah,
And that would be a
budget.
value that could change depending on whoever. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, will we count the message as data?
We could, yeah. If there's kind of a set message, we could do that. Yeah. So that's something will at least be partially hard coded probably. So
do we want more information on what the destinations are? So like, rather than just say, hey, you can go to Paris for $2,000, would we like want to put in more descriptions of what they are? Maybe not for this, but just to think about.
good, yeah. So that's definitely a good thought. I think something like that would be more of like an additional feature we might add later. So our just like fulfilling the minimum for these requirements. First, it doesn't really talk about the destinations with costs. We're probably gonna need to figure out how we're gonna get that information. So that would be kind of an investigation task that we might want to do. But yeah, so that's definitely a good idea, but I think that would probably be more of like an additional feature that we could add. So maybe in the next sprint, we'll add that feature. Okay, so this might be enough to get started. We'll see. We can always come back if we need to change anything. So where does our data belong? So we're gonna make a class. So what are the three kinds of data that we can have in a class?
Instance and class variables.
Yeah, so we can have class variables,
Instance variables.
right? And what's the third one?
Local variables.
Right. So you can have class variables, instance variables, and local variables. So if we think about our data, so our list of destinations with costs, should that be a class, instance, or local variable?
That should be a class variable because it won't change.
Yeah, so it would probably be, so again, like we haven't figured out exactly how we're gonna get that information, but I think probably a class variable. It should be the same for all of them. All right, what about the user's budget?
That'll be an instance variable because it'll
Okay.
change every time you make an instance.
And what about the confirmation message?
Should that be a local because it's going to give the function is going to give a different output based off what they have?
It could. Yeah, so we can let's try that. So local.
I was gonna say that could be either a class or an instance variable.
Yeah, so
Especially because an instance variable, because it'll change with each class or instance of the class.
right. So if we're using kind of a template, so for example, enjoy your trip to X. So enjoy your trip to would be our confirmation message template. So I think you could probably make an argument for a class instance or local variable, depending on how you organized it. We'll just go ahead and try it. We'll try it here and then see what we think. All right, so we have our data and we know kind of how we're going to organize our data. So what about our methods? What methods will we need?
Would it be a method to calculate the cost?
A method to
Calculate the cost of the trip? Would you need or I'm thinking, I guess it's the destination based on the budget. Would it be the cost of the trip?
Yeah, so we have information about the cost. So again, we haven't talked about this yet, but so let's assume that we have like a dictionary or something that has Paris $2,000.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily have to calculate the cost of the trip because we'll already have that information.
We're gonna need one that asks the user what their input for their budget is.
Okay, so get user budget.
And then one that runs that budget through our destinations.
Okay, so we need a method that gets a subset of all of the possible destinations. So that.
And then a confirmation one.
Okay, so we're going to get the user budget. We will somehow filter our return a subset of the possible destinations that are within the budget, and then we'll confirm. So the user so let's walk through kind of the user experience here based on the methods that we have so far.
Well, I think we'll need another method to grab the input for which destination the user wants.
Yeah, so there's going to be one more user action, which is going to be choosing one from this subset. So okay, so if I'm a user, I can enter my budget, in the background, some subset will be returned, then I can choose one from the subset. I can choose one from the subset, and then at the end, I'll put this at the end.
Would we want to add a method to display the the destinations, or can we assume that that will be part of the get destinations in the budget?
Yeah, okay, so that's a good point. So we're gonna get the user's budget, we're gonna get all of the destinations, and then the user will choose, but we'll have to display the available options. So we could put that in another method. So okay, so let's talk about let's talk about each method and pseudocode out each method. So we have the user budget. So getting the user budget. So what should the internals of this get user budget do?
Would it be like an input statement?
Okay.
Are you asking for the code? Would it be like user equals input?
Yeah, so we're just doing pseudocodes. We don't need to, but yes. So I think yeah, input. So something like get. We'll use input and we'll get that input, and then what do we do once we have the input?
Ask the user to enter some information to enter their budget.
Yeah. So we'll ask the user. Let's do. We'll ask the user for the budget, we'll get that input, and then,
We'll want to assign it as a variable.
okay. So we'll do maybe like self that. So pseudocode, I'll mix up maybe some Python. So self that, what are we calling this? Maybe user. Where did I keep? Something like that. Okay, so I think that's probably good for our get user budget.
In
Yeah.
the get user budget, we can probably do a check there to make sure that it's an integer.
Okay, yeah. So you could do, let's do, actually, let's do that here. All right, so get destinations in the budget. So this will be, an internal method. So once we have the user's budget, which will be, let's say, an integer.
Probably return. We'd want to return a value. Probably a list of all the locations with a budget that is less than, with a total cost that is less than the available budget.
Okay. So return list of. How do we get to that return?
Iterate through our data set and find smaller ones.
Okay, yeah. So iterate over list of destinations. And then something like that.
We said that the list of destinations is a dictionary, right?
Well, we haven't really talked about that, and no one's really asked about that.
Okay, can we find that out, or are we going to be creating that?
Well, we should probably figure out what that actually is going to be.
And I'm assuming that's something that's coming from somewhere outside of our program to us, as we're not going to be building and making whatever we want it to be.
Yeah, so we would need to investigate that if we were developers. So that would be a question for everyone to ask. So, where exactly is this coming from? How do we access it? Do we need to make it ourselves?
And what type is it?
Yeah. So since you asked, let's say that we're going to get it. We'll have a mock API or something. So we'll be reading it from a CSV file. So we have a CSV file that has all of the destinations and the costs. So
we'll need to add a method to open and read that file.
Yeah, so we're going to need to read in that file. So
I imagine get destinations and budget. That could be that one's job is to open up that file.
Could be. So now we have. So what would the name of that method be?
If we're doing it separately from the filter method, then it would just be like read destination file, or get destinations from CSV or something like that.
Yeah, so we could. So again, it just depends on how much you want to break up. So we could read the file here, but now we're kind of doing. Arguably, we're doing two different kinds of things here. So I would say probably it's good to have a separate method that would read that in. So where should we put that?
Well, first we need to go back up to the what methods do we need on line 20 and add it. Let's see. Between get user budget, or you could do it at the either first thing or after getting the user's budget.
Okay, let's do it first. So we'll do get destinations, and get destinations. What is that going to do or return?
Then in the next section where we're describing what our methods do, we'll add get destinations there.
Let me put on my headphones, sorry. You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so so get destinations.
So in this one, we'll want to open the file and in read format, or I'm not sure how you would say that, as a reading file.
Sure. Yeah, we don't have to get into the details, but we'll just open the CSV file and read it. So what do we want? What do we want to do with that information in the CSV file?
We want to return it so that we can use it. Let me see.
But in what form?
Yeah. So I'm looking at what we did Thursday, and we did it. We returned it as a instance variable. Let's see.
Okay, so now we're talking about variables. Do we need to go back and adjust anything else up here?
So we have on line 10, the list of destinations with costs. That's kind of what we're trying to make in this method where we open and read the CSV.
Okay.
So we'll open it, we'll read it and return or set it to the variable as a class variable, I think we had decided.
Okay. So what should that be? Should it be what type? What data type should that be?
I vote for a dictionary. But I think you could also make a case for a list of lists.
Okay.
I vote
Anyone else
for-
have any thoughts? Yeah. List of lists, dictionary. Well, since there's such enthusiastic and overwhelming support, let's go with the dictionary for now. And since this is going to be a class variable, we'll something. All right, so get destinations, get user budget, get the destinations in the budget, and display available destinations. So, Jared, what do you think about display available destinations?
We could just print the subset of the dictionary that matches the budget.
Okay. So print. So what will that be? Okay, never mind. We'll yeah. So print the filtered list. Okay. I think that'll probably do it for display. About get user destination choice. John, get user destination choice.
So you'd have to find a way to ask the user basically which one of those options they'd want to choose.
Okay.
You could do that with an input or something they could enter.
Okay.
Index, and that would store that value. Or I don't know, there's probably a bunch of different ways you could do that, but
yeah. So let's say that we, display the list of destinations and the user enters something. Then what should we do?
you would want to store that value as like the decision or something.
Okay. So what kind of variable should that be?
That would be an instance variable.
Okay. Yeah, it could be. Are there any other? Could you make an argument for anything else?
Well, since it should change each time with each different user, I think you can rule out class. You could maybe do a local variable, but
okay. Yeah, so I think you could probably make an argument for either one. So let's do self dot Is there anything else? So are we going to go directly from whatever the user inputs to kind of recording that as the decision?
We'll want to double check that, validate it like we did with the budget.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably be good to validate. So just in general, especially when it comes to web applications, you never want to simply accept user input directly.
Yeah, so I was thinking, is their input gonna have to match the key exactly?
Well, we can we can decide how we implement that.
There's a lot of, it seems like there might be some interesting ways to do that differently. We could change the way we're displaying to have it be numbered, and they could pick a number, or we could have them type in the name of the destination, and if we want to account for upper and lower and weird spaces, or
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of thinking we could do just about this. We'll put that. So in general, we have the general frame for what we're doing. So we'll stick with that. This is, kind of time consuming enough. So let's do display confirmation message. Deb, can you help me with display confirmation message?
Let's see, display confirmation message.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be, would you start with a print statement?
Okay. So what should we print?
Let's see, print confirmation message. Let me see. Would that be Would that include the information, I guess, that we created? Such as perhaps the list of destinations?
Okay, so we're actually printing
The filtered list of destinations?
Yes.
Display available destinations, would it be okay, we're printing the filtered list of destinations there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the destination choices, would it be that?
Okay, so we are, let's see.
Iterate over a list of destinations, and there we're printing the filtered destinations.
Yeah, so
And
they've
the confirmation message, okay.
So what is the purpose of the confirmation message?
Is to confirm that that their request has been honored?
Yeah, basically. So to confirm that they've gone through the entire process and that the destination that they've chosen
Has been honored.
Yeah.
I guess that it's been processed.
Right.
So I guess it can say print that your request has been processed, or
Okay.
or you.
So if we look up here at our data, do we have any data here that we can use?
Let's see. We have the Okay, we already print the list. We can print the costs.
We could print the cost. So the user, yeah. So that would probably be something to include.
The cost, we can print the cost. I guess the cost of their trip. Would that be something we can print?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I mean, that could be part of it. So
Okay.
why do we have this here?
I guess to confirm that their request has been honored. I guess that everything that they had requested has been processed.
Okay, so we'll include the template. So
Mhm.
and plus what? So This
Plus-
is, yeah, this is, enjoy your trip to,
And enjoy your trip to, I guess, whatever their destination is.
right. So where do we have their destination?
The destination would be it would be would that be like plus the destination? Would that be like that would be a message?
So here's
You're looking for?
here's the message template. So
Okay.
the actual place where they're going to end up going, we get that right here. So
Okay.
we have that in self dot decision.
Self dot decision and okay.
Right. Okay. So I think we have all of our methods kind of pseudo coded out, at least enough to get started. So I think what we can do is we'll take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll start actually writing the code for this. Okay, so I've kind of stubbed this out, but we've done all of our pseudo coding, and I have all the methods stubbed out. We're probably going to need to have, do we need an init? Like, how do we create an instance of this travel package? So just a reminder, quick refresher. So what we're doing is we're going to get our destinations, which is from this CSV. And then we're going to get the user's budget. So the user will enter, let's say, 1,000 or whatever. Then we're going to we're going to go through all of the destinations that we pull out of this. And we're going to say, is the cost of this greater or less than the user's budget? If it's within budget, it'll get added to some other list. And then that will get displayed. Whatever we return from here will get displayed. Then we're going to ask the user to choose from among those values that are within the budget. And if the user chooses something that's actually in that list, then we'll display a confirmation message. So what will creating an instance of travel package look like?
Maybe we could call get destinations in it. Self.get destinations.
Okay. Yeah, so that's probably a good thing to do. So
What's the best practices for like a main method? Is that kind of a preference when people
so that like specifically naming something main, I think that's more comes from C++ and Java, or C, I guess C and C++ and Java. Is that right? Do you have to have a main method? Do you have to have a main method in Java?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So in Python, you don't really. So I think it's kind of, as happens in human languages as well. There are patterns that kind of get borrowed in from one language to another. So in Python, you don't really have to. You don't have to have a method called main. It's not how the language works, but people use other languages where you do tend to keep those habits.
Okay, so because I've seen some classes where they'll have a method called main within the class.
Yeah, so you could certainly do that. So that would be like a runner. It would kind of organize how the order of execution, basically. So we might want to do that as well. Let's hold off on that for now. But yeah. So let's talk about initializing. So we create an instance of travel package. Is this it? Okay, let's try doing this. So all right, if anyone has any objections, feel free to jump in. But for now, let's say we want to, when we create an instance, what we're going to do is call this get destinations. And get destinations is going to do something. It's going to get a list of, maybe create some kind of data structure, maybe dictionary, something. And what kind of variable is that going to be?
Class variable.
So how do we, so we have an instance method, calling an instance method, and we're going to create a class variable.
We'd want to define the class variable up at the top, probably something like destinations, and it'd be like an empty dictionary or a null value, and then we can use the get destinations method to actually assign values to it.
Okay, let's try doing that. Okay, so let's let me comment out these real quick. So if we do get destinations, and we'll call it get destinations, return let's do, so how can I assign this to as a class variable?
It would be travel package dot destinations.
Okay.
So I don't think that assignment way will work though. I think you would either need to like add in individual items. So it'd be like we call like the get method on the dictionary to see whether that value exists, and then you can assign a value to it, or you'd have to essentially replace what destinations is. So like for example, if you wanted to change destinations up the top to like a none value, then you could
Okay,
like
so we
assign
could
a new dictionary to it, but
we could do none. We could do it like this, something like that. Let's do,
I think so.
okay, let's do, well, let's just do this. So what's happening here?
Each instance is creating a different destinations dictionary.
Yeah, so each time we create an instance, it's modifying the class. It's modifying the class attribute here. So it's a little,
It's
it's a little
pointing.
tricky. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
It's pointing destinations to a new place for each instance.
So there's only one, because it's a class variable, there's only one destinations, but every time we create a new instance, we're changing this, which is probably not what we want to be doing, because we want this to just be the same. We don't want instances messing with this.
So do we want to call get destinations, self.get destinations outside of the init method?
We could, but then unless we call it for every instance, this is still going to be
It's not going to get created.
none. Yeah. So this is an issue, right? We have class stuff, we have instance stuff. So Python, actually, there's a decorator called a class method. So there's static method where you don't have to pass in self at all if you decorate with a static method, if you're not using any instance stuff. There's also a class method. So a class method, instead of getting an instance as the first parameter, will actually get the class. So that's conventionally used like this. So we can actually still call this method like this here. And let's do, since we have a reference to it, let's try this. We still have the same problem, but it should be solvable. So what we can do here is we can add a check. So we can say, basically, we can check if it exists. So if it exists, then we don't need to do anything, right? We'll just return. And if it doesn't exist, then we'll change it. And I'm going to print. Well, I won't get to print the ID there. Let's try this.
Is that if the variable exists or if it has a value other than none?
So can anyone answer that?
I think it should be if it's something other than none or false or zero, right?
Yeah, so if it's
Falsy.
falsy, yeah. So this will be converted to a Boolean. So we could use none, we could use false, we could use an empty array. So there are a number of
if we wanted to know if that existed, I'm thinking of dictionaries, never mind.
So you run this. Now both instances are sharing the same destination. So there are a few ways of handling this issue. This is one of them. So now, no matter how many instances we create, we're only ever going to have that same data. Get rid of this. We'll put this on one line. Okay. So that works as like a, so we've solved that initial problem, right? So now we can make sure that instances aren't messing with the class and that they all have the same, they're all accessing that same thing. So how do we actually get this? We have a dummy value here. So we need to read from the CSV and say we want to create a dictionary. Again, we could do this in a few different ways. We could make dictionaries. So first off, how do we just read from the CSV?
You have to open it first.
Okay. So how do we open that?
You do self. Go ahead.
Jeff.
You start. with the width, the width.
Okay.
With open, and we'll call the file name,
Okay.
and then we'll say as and give it a variable name.
Okay.
Yeah. And then a colon, and then from that you can do like list comprehension here, however you want to iterate over it and pull it in. This is where you can use that reader or print.
Okay.
Or
Okay. Let's do.
I think we decided to put it in a dictionary, right?
Yeah. So how do we do that? Dictionary.
I gotta look up the exact syntax, but I know it's a Dict Reader is the
Okay.
overall function. I forget the 100% the syntax.
Yeah. So that's fine. So Dict Reader, and where does that Dict Reader come from?
Oh, we got to import CSV.
Yeah. So we'll import CSV, and then the CSV has this Dict Reader. So we'll do Dict Reader. And what does Dict Reader take?
The variable we gave destinations.csv when we opened it.
Yeah, so we'll take this. Okay.
If
yeah.
we're using this class somewhere else, importing it into another file, will it also import CSV since that's outside of the class?
Yeah, so what we're passing here is a file path. So you could make the file path dynamic. So I think for one of the challenges there's
right, but on line 1, when we import CSV, the CSV library, do we need to do that in every file, in every separate code file that we would use the class for?
So if you're importing this class somewhere else, then everything here should work basically. So this you'll import this one, and this one will import this one. So that shouldn't be a problem.
It comes in there with it. Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
All right, let's print. Yeah, we might just get an object here, but a Dict Reader object. So let's iterate over that. Okay, looks like that's working. All right. So we have this dictionary reader. So we should think about how exactly we want this to, exactly how we want to package this up. So now we have a bunch of dictionaries, potentially. So when we're actually going to use this, where is it? Display available destinations, get destinations in budget. So this is where we're actually going to be using this, right? Get destinations in budget. And iterate over the list of destinations. So if we can get a bunch of individual dictionaries here, we could so what do you think an appropriate data type would be?
And just to be clear, when we were reading that, each dictionary is a line from the CSV?
Yeah.
Okay, so we could make a list of the dictionaries.
You could. So let's okay, so that looks like it works. So let's try doing that for now. All right, so now we should have access to this. So in here, TP dot. Okay, so looks like that is working so far. So I think, we might have to adjust that, but that's fine. So we have now a list of dictionaries. So let's work on, let's knock some. So in some ways, this was the hardest one. So let's knock out some of these other ones. Get user budget.
Would that be an input statement?
Yep, so we can call input. So let's look at our pseudocode. So get user budget. So ask the user for budget. So Deb, can you tell me what to write here for ask the user for budget?
Can you start with like user equals input?
Okay. So what's the value that we want to be that we want the user to input?
Enter your, I guess, user equals input. Enter your budget.
Okay. So we want like the budget, which will be a number. Let's say an amount of dollars or something. So so what's a good name for that variable?
It could be, I guess, your value.
Okay. So value equals input.
Enter your value.
Okay. So you do something like that. Actually, now let's just for the ease of development, let's write a run. So let's write a main. So def main self, and we'll do get user budget. Okay, so what error am I getting here? Deb, can you help me out with this one?
Get user but takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given.
So where is this error occurring?
It's on, looks like it's line 21 and 37.
Okay, so 21, 37. So 37.
I guess there's no reference to it on 37.
Well, so it's giving you a traceback. So the first thing we tried is we call the main method.
Mm-hmm.
The main method calls self dot get user budget.
Mm-hmm.
And then on line 21, self dot get user budget throws an error.
Okay, so it looks like it says a positional argument, get user budget takes a positional argument, but 1 was given.
So is the problem which method has the problem?
It looks like it's in line, I guess line 20, it looks like 21. I would say 21. The one, I guess this one that starts in 20.
Okay, so how should we fix it?
I'm sorry?
How should we fix it?
Let's see, let me look at this. Value equals enter your budget, self.get user budget. Let me think. Get user budget.
So if you read the error, it's saying that get user budget. This
Looks like it's missing some type of an argument.
right. So it says that it takes 0 positional arguments.
But one was given.
So did we give it an argument? Did we pass in an argument here when we called it?
I would say yes.
I mean, is there an argument here?
No.
Okay, so we didn't pass in an argument, but
Right.
it got one anyway.
Right. So we don't need one.
But
I was-
we're not passing it one, but it got one anyway. So where is
Right.
that argument coming from?
I would say it's coming from line 17. Is that where it's come, line 21?
Right. So this is where the problem is.
Yes, 17 is.
Mhm. So so we need to give it self.
Okay.
So this is an instance method. So we need to make sure we're passing an instance. Okay, so if we do this, that fixes the problem and we can enter our budget. All right, so we have, now we have value, which is whatever the user inputs. So what do you do next? Let's do Anthony. You're muted.
All right, so we've gotten through where we get the budget now.
Mhm.
So we're going to get destinations, or
Yeah, so if we look at our pseudocode, we're asking the user for the budget, we're getting the input. So we've got that.
so you want me to validate it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do that.
Could we just force whatever comes in to be an integer, or do we check if the type is an integer?
You could try it. Yeah, you could do. So in general, type checking is kind of frowned upon as being unPythonic, but we can do it anyway. So let's put it in a try catch block. Try value equals. All right, so what we're doing here is, this is just kind of notional validation, but the try block will try to do whatever this is. So let's see what happens. Okay, so that works fine. What if we do?
Do we need to recall the function under the except block?
Yeah, we could. I mean, so I don't want to get too into like handling edge cases just because this will, just take absolutely forever. But I think this is a good kind of notional thing. So just so you know, like how you could handle something like that. Okay, and then what's the last part of get user budget?
Oh, we have to set self.user budget to whatever that input was.
Okay, so self.user. So self.user budget, where is that coming from?
Is that set up above?
It's not. So we don't have to. So this will work. But again, in terms of maintainability and so on, it's usually a good idea to think of this as like your signature.
Okay.
So anyone who looks at this should know all of the properties that this class has. You can do that. We're basically just saying it's like a a promise. So there's going to be a self.user budget at some point. And here we're actually setting it. Okay, so getting the user budget. I'm going to move this down to the bottom. All right, Greg, can you help me with get destinations in budget? So we're going to, well, we're already opening the CSV, so I guess we can modify our, we're not going to do that.
That's get destinations, not get destinations in budget.
Thank you. Right, thank you. So we'll iterate over the list of destinations. We'll filter somehow based on the user's budget, which we now have, and then we'll return the filtered list of destinations.
All right, so you can say for D in class.destinations.
Okay.
And let's see. We're going to filter based on.
Are you in a garden or something?
Oh, no, that's just, I'm right by the balcony.
Oh, okay.
But, right, so we can use a, actually, do we need, we might not need to iterate this way. If we're going to do a filter, we could just use the filter function, right?
Yeah, so there's a few, yeah, so yeah, there's a few different ways we could do that. We could either, do a for loop and then maybe build another list based on that. Or we could try doing filter. The issue is
list comprehension.
Yeah, we could do list comprehension. So it's up to you, however you want to do it. There's no, I mean, yeah.
I guess I would go with list comprehension then.
Okay.
So then we could say, let's filter destinations.
Yeah.
So what is it? A D for D in CLS.destinations. If D, let's see, what was the
So here's what an individual entry looks like.
Okay. Okay, if D, and we want to use the index cost. And then less than or equal to, well, we're going to want to cast the cost into an int.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Remember, everything that you pull out of a CSV is a string.
If it's less than or equal to self.user budget.
All right, so let's try.
And I hope I got the syntax right for the list comprehension, but
yeah, it looks right to me. So let's try running this and we'll see what happens. Let's call in main. We'll add this to main now. We'll do self get destinations in budget.
Do we want to cast that into a dictionary too, so that it returns a dictionary?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Just hold that thought for 1 sec.
we don't have self in the.
Okay. So if you get this error telling you that you're passing in an argument and you're not actually passing in an argument, itself. So let's try running this again. Okay, name class is not defined. So let me change this. We have a couple options, but let me change this to, what is this called? Travel package. Okay, and let's try, and we get all of them. Okay, so it looks like that is working. Let's see. All right, so so
Would
the
you-
issue.
Would you mind running it with a lower budget?
Yes, yeah. So let me run it with 1300. So it should be, let's try it with we're getting just these two. So the issue is now, so we're getting like the whole thing, but we really just want the name of the country.
Yeah, so then instead of D, 4D, we can say D, the key is destination.
Okay. Okay, so this looks like what we want. So we're just getting these two countries. Okay. Let's scoot this over.
So then we just need to return that list.
Okay. All right, so get destinations in budget. So now we're
We've got-
returning.
Oh, sorry, we've got a open parentheses still in there at the beginning.
Ah. Okay. So now we have, okay, so just to review. So first when we create, we're assigning to the class the stuff in the CSV that we need, our basic data, like our database. And then we're going to get the user's budget. And then we're going to get a subset of possible destinations based on the budget. So now we need to display the available destinations. So Jeff, can you help me display available destinations?
Oh yeah, since it's already been returned, you would just, for this, you just print to the console the return of get destinations and budget.
Okay, yeah, we could do that here. So
unless it's not like, yeah, so you would do print statement.
you could, let's do that. And instead of calling it here, we will call display. So what's the problem here?
I'm muted. I was muted. It's giving
Oh,
itself,
sorry.
but it doesn't want it for some reason. Oh, you got to put self there. Sorry, in the parentheses.
Okay. So let's try that. All right. So that seems to be working. So now we need to get the user destination choice. So Jim, get the user destination choice. We need to get the input, validate the input, and then assign it.
Okay, let's see. Get user destination choice. All right, so like, I guess we'll just check if whatever the result of their input is equal to one of the items in that list. Let me just check something. Get destination budget. Okay. All right. So we want to get destination budget. We might be able to make this static. I don't know if we're using any instance variables. So we'll just check if, so we need to create a local variable here for
Okay.
their input.
Okay. So
Yeah, and it'll be input. Yep. Please select a destination.
Okay.
And then we just need to compare that to the return value of, I guess we do need self.get destinations in budget.
yeah, so now so we have this function that returns a value and we're calling it here, and then we're going to call it again here.
Right. So we could create an instance variable where we store that.
Okay. So would you like to refactor get destinations and budget?
Sure. So we can scroll up to the top, I guess, and then create an instance variable called destinations in budget. So self.destinations in budget. And that'll just, I guess we could do none first instead of an empty list.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, either one will work. I mean, it's not a typed language, obviously, but something like this might be helpful for other developers to know that.
Okay, right.
This, I mean, but then we have this issue with the budget where
instead of int, yeah.
You could maybe do 0.
Okay.
Or you could do, what is it? Do negative infinity, like the lowest possible value, depending if we wanted to accept negative values or not. So something like that you could do as well.
All right. And then I guess instead of in get destinations in budget, instead of returning that, you just set self.destinations in budget to it.
Okay.
And then
we're gonna also have to refactor this too, right?
Display available destinations. Oh, correct. Yeah. So print self.destinations in budget.
Okay.
Self.destinations in budget. I just want to make sure we're calling get destinations in budget somewhere.
Yeah, so probably here in the in our runner or the main. So
oh, okay, yeah.
We'll call it there. Okay, so it looks like that is working. We're not calling this yet.
Right. Yep. So there, we're going to need to compare the user choice to the options in our self.destinations in budget.
Okay. So how can we do that?
We just have to check if that value is inside of our list.
Okay.
So if user choice in self.destinations in budget, and then I guess we'll just return a print. So we'll just print and say you've chosen, so print, you can do a format string, I guess.
Okay. So, so I think you might be creeping into this next functions job.
Yep.
So
I guess, so get user destination choice. So this is just returning a Boolean, I guess.
So we want, if we look at our our pseudocode here, we're going to want to assign whatever, if the valid input to self.decision.
Okay. Do we have a self.decision yet?
No.
Okay.
Not
So we
yet.
have to create that.
We can do that. So again, we don't have to, you can create instance attributes in methods, but this is just kind of like a way to make your code clear. So, and this will be a string. We can do that, kind of like indicating the type.
Okay. Yeah. Self.decision equals user choice.
Okay. So let's see what happens. We try to run this. Get an error.
Yeah, we need the self.
Okay. All right, almost done. Almost done. So
Do we need to add a second part to that validation if it fails the validation?
sure, yeah. Else you want to help me with that?
Yeah, I would just print, please choose a choice from the list
Okay.
given. And then run get user destination choice again.
Okay.
Maybe also print the list again after that message.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So user destination choice. So let's try that. And of course, we're being bad at not writing unit tests, but I think maybe self.get user budget, get destinations in budget.
I think we're not displaying them in the main.
Yeah. So we could call this in main, or we could also call it here, maybe. Kind of depends on what we want to do. Maybe I'll just call it.
If you call it at the beginning of get user destination choice, we won't have to put it in the else statement the second time.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's do that. Okay. All right. So it looks like that works so far. And all right, display confirmation message. Jenny, can you bring us home?
Sure. So we will need a string. Well, first put self in
Okay.
parameters.
You don't want to go through that?
No, I do not. I don't care to go through that. There's no reason to. So go ahead and self.decision. Okay. So go ahead and print, and we'll do a formatted string. And that can say have a good time at, and then we can put self.decision.
All right. Let's do leave confirmation message. Okay. I'll comment this out. Looks like it works. We didn't exactly follow this here, but that's fine. So just to recap, we have our travel package. We have a class variable destinations, which we're getting by reading this, and we're going to use the class method so we can access the class. So we're not just overwriting it every time. And we're doing a little check. If anyone's familiar with design patterns, object, we haven't talked about this, but it's kind of like a singleton. If anyone's familiar with those. So we just want to make sure that there's only one copy. So we'll check if it exists. If it does, then we're just gonna ignore it. Otherwise, we'll create it. Then we're gonna get the user budget. We're gonna grab the input. We're gonna do some quick validation. And then we'll assign that to the user budget. And we're gonna get all of the destinations that are within the budget. So we're using a list comprehension. We're just going to pull the destination out of the dictionary if the cost is less than or equal to the budget. Then we're going to display all of the available destinations. So that's just a print statement. Then we're going to get the user destination choice. So again, we're going to get input from the user. We're not, yeah, I mean, so we are doing some validation here. We could add more complex validation, of course. We could do case insensitive, a check or something like that. And then we're displaying the confirmation message. And that's about it. Are there any questions about that?
I have a question about that class decorator.
Yeah.
So when would it already be populated? Like when would we run into a situation where that if statement on line 15 would return true?
If a prior instance has already, so when we had in this case, right? So the first time that we create an instance of this class, that class variable is going to be assigned. So this will be false because destinations will be none. So the class's destination attribute will be false. It will be none, so it'll be falsy. So we'll fall through and execute this, and then this will be created. So the second time we create an instance, this class variable will be the list of dictionaries that we have.
Okay. So it's actually changing our class variable for everything. That's the whole point of class variables.
Yeah. So the idea that the point of what we're doing here is that we don't want every instance to recreate the class variable.
Right.
So we just want one copy. We want it to happen once, and that's it. So the first instance is kind of a special in that sense. So the first instance will be responsible for creating the class's destinations attribute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? That was a little long. I apologize, but